Welcome back to The Drop, the Amen Breaks podcast featuring Diligent Fingers. This week, we're speaking with Matthew Smith, photographer and artist who has single-handedly captured the birth, the development and the growth of the UK raving scene and culture through photography. As ever, this platform is going out every week on all the major streaming channels such as iTunes and Spotify. You can catch us on amenbreaks.co.uk as well as on Instagram, amenbreaksuk, and on Facebook. So, let's get into it. First and foremost, thank you very much for joining us today. I've just been talking to Billy about all of the stuff that you've been doing, and you know how you've been working with, well, not with anyone really in general, just you know the things that you've captured over the years, and it's really exciting to have someone who's literally captured the history of the dance and rave genre. So like I say, we're super interested to learn from you about everything that you've done over the years,
especially coming from me, like being up north, like being from Manchester. Obviously we were around in Manchester for the actual like beginnings, and we didn't see the absolute beginnings of where like rave and everything like started. So being from up north, it's got to be great to hear your perspective on things and how it was back then, Matt.
Well, would you believe that I actually went and did my degree in Stoke-on-Trent?
Yeah.
Which is just like 40 miles away, isn't it? 47 miles away from Manchester?
Yeah, not far at all.
So, while I was at college, two of my mates were working in the cocktail bar at the Hacienda.
Mm-hmm.
A guy called Andy Kirk,
yeah.
a lady called Jo Evans. And they were both at college in Stoke with us. So we formed this society called the Jazz Blues Society. Because if you formed a society with the student union, it meant you got a free minibus. So basically, Joe's dad had an animation company in Ducey Street that had a flat attached to it. So we used to get a free minibus to go listen to jazz blues in Manchester, but in reality, we were going to the Hacienda.
Nice. I mean, that's taking it all the way back, right? I mean, the Hacienda was sort of like the first proper club, And I'm fairly sure that the documentary or the mockumentary 24-Hour Party People with Steve Coogan in it doesn't really do it justice.
I was at college at 87 to 90 in Stoke-on-Trent.
Yeah. And
it would have been like the second year that we kind of discovered. So that would be like 88.
I was 7 years old then.
Yeah, and like 1990, Sasha began his first residency at Shelley's in Stoke-on-Trent. But we were, I was going raving in Liverpool at that point. This acid house club called Big Macs, because my girlfriend was at college, art college in Liverpool. And also we'd been to free parties in Somerset, and actually free parties in Somerset were a whole lot more fun because the urban thing was like a lot more. I don't know, it was just. There were bouncers, entry fees, and it just felt a little bit more. There was a lot more pressure. Do you know what I mean? But it was good fun. So saying that, but I'm a rural person, and definitely, I've always gravitated towards parties in fields rather than nightclubs.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I actually grew up in Somerset. I grew up just outside of Bath, and. As we know, the countryside is a pretty good place to go off into the woods and have raves, right? It's the sort of stuff that I grew up doing. A lot of my mates, would be going to quarries or into fields or into woods.
You would have gone to Holcombe Quarry.
The where, sorry?
Holcombe Quarry.
Holcombe Quarry, yeah. Know it very well. Used to go there a lot. That's actually the village that I pretty much grew up in. Yeah, Holcombe.
Yeah, see, that's rave central around around Bath, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
The difference between my experience of being up north, being down south, was obviously loads of people living on site in those years, and there were little sites all over the place. Plus, there were farmers, and we never really went to sort of illegal parties on land that somebody occupied. It was always somebody's birthday in a barn, or in somebody's dad's fields. It wasn't the kind of like grand trespassing kind of thing that the government later made it out to be.
And so it's like over time it sort of evolved from there, like as it sort of got more attention that these sort of big birthday parties were going on. Eventually it sort of evolved into sort of bigger parties, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think that, like, some of the first free parties really I went to were run by bikers in farmhouses. But then, of course, you had the big West Country connection with DIY, and they would come to Somerset and out the levels in the moors in the flatlands.
Right.
So they were the very, very first free parties proper free parties I went to that would have been like 91, 92, I guess, early 92.
Yeah.
Before Castle Moor had happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was obviously that was the one that sort of changed everything, wasn't it? Because it did turn into like a week-long festival, and there was very little that people could do, or very little that the police could do, because there was like 40,000 people turned up to it.
Well, there's a big case to say that actually the police helped to manufacture it, and that the BBC helped to market it, because it was the only pre-festival that was ever advertised on the TV as it was happening. And there were so many convoys of people on the road over that weekend, over the Castle Moor weekend, that the police had to do something with them. And their strategy back then was to contain, the party. So they wanted everybody to be in the same place, because there were convoys all up the A46. And my friend Jenny Smith, who was a Labour councillor in Bristol, she was on site looking after, welfare at these stopping places where people were just massed and waiting to find out where to go. And of course, the government by that time were looking for an excuse. So I think Castle was very much an excuse. I wasn't even there. I was in London working for a photographer who was photographer to the Rolling Stones in the 60s. My first big job out of college. But I was getting phone calls from all my mates from Somerset going, ditch your job, come to the party now, kind of thing. But I know obviously I couldn't go because I was running a studio. But at the same time, one of the really formative things that happened to me that year was, and the year before in 91, was I went to work for Polygram, the international record conglomerate. Working in London, I lived with this girl called Debbie, and she was the secretary to the marketing director. So I ended up meeting Maurice Oberstein, Obi, the Texan multi-billionaire who ran Polygram. And for 2 years in a row, I got invited to go and be the photographer at that annual sales conference, which meant them taking over an entire hotel. First year was at Heathrow, big hotel, I think Sheraton Skyline. The second year was in Canary Wharf, somewhere, some big hotel there. But they'd fly in all of their stars kind of thing, and all the record labels would have suites and all that kind of thing. The first year was there was a kidney-shaped pool in the Sheraton Skyline, and in the middle of the pool they had a boxing ring, and the boxing rink was supported by a troupe of synchronized swimmers, and there was a one lane into the boxing rink where Maurice Oberstein was stood, and there was a gangplank off the side. So the first night was like a big party, but they celebrated it by inviting people onto the boxing ring, either to get an award from the company for doing well, or in front of all of their colleagues to get pushed off the gangplank into the water and sat.
Wow.
But when that made me really consider, because the format of that sales conference was the same both years. The first day was all about what the company had put their money into to begin with and made a success of in the previous year. The second day was all about what the company were going to market as culture in the coming year and what they were going to sell to the public. And of course, there was Pete Tong from Radio 1 was there, because the Radio 1 was their access point to the public. So obviously they were schmoozing all of the big DJs at the time, and like, you know, the second year I went to a party with Pete Tong DJing, and he's 17, at like probably 17 themselves, shuffling around the dance floor, banana rama, half naked in an underground pool, kind of thing. But that contrast between experiencing the free party culture that I had in the West Country and then seeing how culture was manufactured by those corporate giants was something that motivated me massively to think, okay, I'm going to leave my job because there's something really interesting going on out there in the world that's organic, democratic. It's not being sold by a massive corporation and manufactured. Because, you know, that taught me that, you know, if you want to sell something, you've got enough money behind it, you can sell anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And that was the attraction. You know, that really was the attraction. So post like 92, when I left college, you know, we moved to Bristol from, you know, a whole bunch of us art college people, and that was when Sunnyside came into being. You know, we were, I had film graduates, you know, design people kind of thing. We'd all lived together in Stoke. They'd all been to Somerset, come to the parties. Bristol was the next logical choice for a big city to go to. So we moved there. And one of us had got a job in the intervening time as personal secretary to Colin Moynihan, who was the Conservative sports minister at the time.
Wow.
So for a while before I left London, I was going for dinner, you know, for lunch at Houses of Parliament dining rooms, sitting next to cabinet ministers and stuff like that, getting 3 courses for a £5. And it was through him that we learned of the arrival of the Criminal Justice Bill. And you know, we just decided it was our God-given, our public-spirited responsibility to oppose it and do something about it.
Yeah.
So throughout 1993 and in 1994, that's what we did. We produced film. You know, we started doing our own parties late 93, photography, graphics. You know, we got involved with Liberty. You know, with Friends and Families of Travellers. You know, all those kind of like support organisations. And that's how we really got invited to be part of the Criminal Justice Bill demonstration.
Right. Because you were definitely in a unique position, being sort of having a foot in the corporate world as well as having a foot in the underground sort of music world as well. Do you know what I mean? So you had a unique perspective, seeing, like you said, seeing what was manufactured as culture and then seeing what actually was culture. Do you know what I mean? And how the people that truly loved the music were sort of rebelling against what was out there. Do you know what I mean? With the rise of parties and stuff like that.
It's important to understand that actually it wasn't so much rebelling, it was just part of life.
Yeah.
You know, because to rebel against something, you need some kind of opposition. And government became that opposition when they criminalised the culture. And they criminalised it because of the mass social mobilisation that it was provoking. You know, and the fact that culture was self-policing. You know, they made out to be really dangerous, but in fact, you know, so many people went that they couldn't be dangerous. It was safe.
Yeah.
You know, people regulated their own behaviour. You know, it wasn't a case of like, you know, of you know, that gangster freshly photo nightclubs at all. It was fun. It was happy. And more to the point, it was just self-motivated. People pre-mobile phone would decide in their thousands to end up at the same place at the same time by some kind of unique synchronicity.
Yeah.
That was just unfathomable. So they felt like secret. You know, the original guys who you got to one and it felt like a secret that you were sharing.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to remember a time where there wasn't a party line. Like, how did we get to these places without a party line? But somehow we got there. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
you'd get out your car and meet people and ask them and, you know, chat.
Yeah. I mean, I always remember, and you still see them a little bit nowadays as well, you know, the party lines and stuff like that. And they would often be, you know, just one mobile number with a pre-recorded message on it. And, you know, the directions were incredibly vague, especially in Somerset as well, you know, where there's a lot of fields around, where there's a lot of, you know, samey looking stuff, you know, you're like, right, you go down this road and then there'll be a big tree on the left and you need to walk 5 feet. And you're just like, oh man, come on. Like,
I've still got maps that I drew in pencil and then photographed, you know. With clear landmarks, you know, lakes, forest, up here. We had a brilliant series of parties in these woods up above Nether Stowey, and it was forestry commission land. But the brilliant thing was the local forestry warden commission. You know, the forestry wardens were friends of friends, So they gave my mates a set of keys to this land. So it meant that we could just pull up, unlock the gates, head off into the forest to this fantastic Iron Age hill fort picnic area that was hardcore, flat, with a picnic table at one end, just big enough to put a tent on and have the decks on the table at the back. And of course, nobody knew we were ever there.
Yeah. And like, this is what's really interesting about you saying it being self-policing as well. I mean, you look at the state of modern festivals and the sheer destruction that happens when people go to these things. And I know they are getting better. You know, Glastonbury was something like 98.9% of all tents were taken last year. You know, but there's still a huge amount of waste that goes on. You know, back in the day when they'd have these free parties, you wouldn't know that they'd ever been there. You know,
to a certain extent, it was a big job from time to time, and I've talked to a few people now, just like talked about your experience of like wandering around with a black paper bag, picking up used toilet paper. Not glamorous in the slightest. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Not glamorous in the slightest at times, but responsible at the same time. You know, particularly for us in some, you know, in the West Country when the locations were rural. You know, that it was a massive responsibility, and frequently, you know, we just take bin bags, dole them out to people. You know, always make sure we have a couple of hundred, and just like Sunday morning, give them out, send people out on a mission.
I remember the first parties I was going to, like, they weren't on the scale of like Glastonbury's where people had like tents and stuff like that, but every party that I first started going to, like say in Sheffield, just off Snakes Pass, or in Goyt Valley, do you know what I mean? The really nice sort of rural places, or really like when it gets to the sunrise, you're being attacked by gnats, but you actually look out and you see the streams, you see the fields of green and stuff, and the really beautiful places. When you're there, I feel like when you see it, you have that, you just feel that responsibility, like, nah, I can't leave these cans here. Do you know what I mean? So I don't.
Absolutely.
For us, it didn't seem like it was a thing that anyone was putting on us. It's like it felt like people were actively trying to make sure we left the place better than how we kind of found it. Do you know what I mean? Like now,
and I think that's all part of the way that these events help to create community in a very real way.
Because we want to look after these places. We want to be able to come back.
Yeah. So, well, you know for sure that somebody out there is going to be trying to shoot you down for doing what you do. So you want to do everything possible to not give them any ammunition.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You know, culture is a really very important thing. You know, we haven't done many of these podcasts at the moment, but you know, speaking about culture is a very, very critical thing that we talk about a lot, you know, and the culture of how, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about is modern day drum and bass and jungle, right? But the, you know, the culture from where this all comes from stems a lot of conversation for us, because we sit there and we say, well, you know, back in the day, it used to be about, you know, bootlegging. You could go and steal, you know, a break from someone, and you could, you know, make your own track. And it was all about the rebellion element of things like that. But, you know, from what it sounds like initially, the whole thing was, you know, just a cultural thing. We all want to get together and have a good time. From there, at what point was it that you sort of realized that people were sort of politicizing the movement?
Well, I don't think it was people that politicised the movement. I think it was government. You know, when government decided to legislate against that culture, they decided they were trying to prevent a self-policing, self-regulating, massive population of people from across the UK from popularising a lifestyle, particularly the travelling lifestyle, that it's kind of the enemy of everything that government wants. You know, government wants you to have an address. It wants you to be taxable. It wants you to be traceable. You know, the numbers of people who were living on the road in the 80s were massive, and it was an ongoing phenomenon. The numbers were growing, so they wanted to cut that social phenomenon to dead. And the Beanfield in 1985 was the first attempt at that. You know, the criminal justice bill post Castle Morton, that was the secondary thing. And it's notable that, you know, that legislation also contained, you know, legislation to prevent squatting. You know, it's any excuse for people to escape from the housing market and to house themselves has gradually been closed down in our lifestyle, in our lifetime. So to me that's always been a really significant thing, and it's one of the reasons that I made the book, was because I became interested in the idea of cultural enclosure. Land was given value by enclosing it, by building walls around it. And what the Criminal Justice Act did was it put walls around culture and turned it into a market that could then be exploited and licensed back to a population that had made it in the first place. And that's what you see now with modern festivals. Every aspect of the events has to be pre-planned, insured, licensed, approved by the police and local authorities. Otherwise, you don't get your license. And it's kind of like a bit of a massive extortion racket, because the culture existed perfectly successfully on its own before the introduction of compulsory licensing.
Yeah, man. Just for the people that are listening, that may not know about your book, do you just want to let everyone know about your book and where we can find it? Because I would love to read it myself, to be honest.
In 2012, I'd been living in Bristol, right in the centre of Bristol, for like maybe 15 years. And I left Bristol, sold my house, and I couldn't get another mortgage. So I had to decide what to do with the money. So I looked at the work I'd made over the course of my lifetime up until that point. And I realised that I had a unique archive of social history, that began at Glastonbury in 1989 when I went as a second-year student at Stoke-on-Trent. And worked for Michael Evans for 2 months, watching the festival go up and come down. And and really from that point, I carried on documenting, music, dance culture, as it went through criminalisation and came out the other side and became, the massively successful event industry that we have today. So I basically self-isolated for 4 years. I took myself out of Bristol. I found a really cheap place to live in the middle of nowhere in the countryside in the West Country, and set up a studio in this derelict it was a disabled person's activity centre. And I went to Property Guardian. It was £250 a month all in, no bills, no nothing. Nearest shop's like 20-minute drive away. And I sat there for 4 years with my scanner and my negatives, making the archive of like 150,000 pictures that went in to make Exist to Resist the book.
Wow.
And at the end of that time, I was kind of like working out how to produce the book from that, because I knew that I had, from working on it all that time, I knew that I had something really interesting that was unique to me as an artist. And consequently, I put, we ran a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter hit its 12 grand funding target in 9 days and went on to make 23 grand in a month.
Wicked.
Supported by people like Ken Loach. It got worldwide press, from Australia to America to like Rolling Stone Italia, Russia. And I think it was supported by about nearly 600 people up front. And I made 1,100 copies. And subsequently, the other 500 odd went in just a few months. And now it's kind of like, it's in the library of the Victorian Albert Museum. The editor of Channel 4 News bought a signed copy. He was like, Matt, I've got a newsroom for the 20-somethings. They're all brilliant, but they don't really know shit. So I need to buy one of these, take it back up there and show them. Aphex has got a copy. You come around and pick one up. Who else? What else? Martin Parr. Yeah, that's the baby. That is the baby. On the front of the cover is Keith from Desert Storm Sound System and a lady called Shona. And that image was taken on the third Criminal Justice Film March, just before the massive, riot instigated by the police called the Battle of Hyde Park.
Yeah.
You could tell from that picture that riot was going to happen, and it was pre-planned, because if you look at the windscreens of the riot vans, all of the shields are down. So they were expecting trouble, because the previous two marches have been pretty much utterly peaceful. Carnival events. They were landmark kind of experiences for me, because it taught me that, having been on the overtly violent of the the poll tax demo in I think it was 1991, where there was no sound systems to dance to. We took sound system on the first two criminal justice bill marches, and the atmosphere was just electric. Giving people that positive focus of entertainment within a protest situation was just something that immediately became evident as being completely valuable. And with the first two marches being utterly successful, the numbers growing from first to the second to the massive numbers of the third march, it became evident that the police wanted an excuse to invalidate the reasons for opposition to the Criminal Justice Act, and I think absolutely purposefully instigated the violence that became the Battle of Hyde Park, and that was reported in all the papers as the Kill the Bill demonstrations. And I think some of the interesting research that I've done since then, that's come about as a result of the Mitting inquiry into undercover policing, is that the Socialist Worker Party, who branded those demonstrations with their placards which said "Kill the Bill," at that time in the 90s, they were one of the most heavily infiltrated by the Special Demonstration Squad, by undercover policemen. And I have this kind of theory that has yet to be proved, that it is a distinct possibility that there could have been police within the Socialist Worker Party who came up with that slogan and produced those placards in order to make it seem like an anti-police demonstration that was inherently violent, when in fact it was nothing of the kind.
Yeah, because I was reading quite a bit about that a little while ago. I wrote an article on the website about free parties and illegal raves and how they're actually making a comeback across the country. And there's a really great Vice documentary about that as well. And obviously you don't have to go very far to back into the annals of history for things like Castle Morton to appear, and then the Battle of Hyde Park. And a lot of people who were there, a lot of the journalists who were covering this sort of thing, say exactly the same thing, like that it was the police that instigated it. And on a wider scale, because the first two protests had been so successful and so peaceful, it was kind of jarring for the public opinion for them to say, hey, all these free party ravers and stuff like that, you're telling them that they can't go out and do stuff. You're telling them that they're being illegal, when all we've seen so far is thousands of them turn up, be very peaceful, be very positive, and cooperative with everyone. They're just saying, hey guys, how can fun be illegal? So when the third one came around, like I say, there's lots of eyewitness accounts, there's lots of journalistic review that would say that it was the police that instigated this, because then it gave legitimacy to the fact that these ravers were they're all hopped up on drugs. It was illegal for them to be doing all of these things, and it was really and this is the end result. If you go to raves, then you end up being violent and horrific and things like that as well. So I would be inclined to agree with your opinion.
Well, here's a little story for you that you might well appreciate. Earlier that year, we'd been trying to organise an Avon Free Festival in outside Bristol, and obviously it was 2 years after Castle Morton. What a lot of people don't realise, that the Castle Morton was the Avon Free Festival that had like a massive tradition of happening, and we got roadblocked into a manor house outside Bath called Warding Manor by a whole bunch of people. It was like 7 rigs waiting to go somewhere else. So me and my friend heard that they'd set up a mobile control centre up at Chippering Sodbury Village Hall. And we thought, right, well, okay, well, let's go, and what do we do to find out what they're doing to stop us? Let's go and ask the Chief of Police in charge of the operation to stop us and interview him. So we drove up to this mobile control centre in this village hall, drove into the car park in an innocuous grey Volvo, and immediately got surrounded by off-duty coppers. There was, obviously, radio station, all that kind of thing going on. And they're leaning in the windows of the cars going, right, lads, what's the gen? Where are we going? What's the info? You come to report in. And I'm like, you think we're undercover? And and obviously that was the impression, that we were undercover policemen come to report in about what the ravers were doing. And if ever there was concrete proof to me that the culture was massively infiltrated at that point, that was it. And I've still got the notebook that I wrote down the copy's comments in it, and he said to me, when the Criminal Justice Act is passed, the TSG, we call them the Dogs of War, will be tooled up and unleashed on the hippies.
Wow. That sounds directly from the time as well, to be fair. Tooled up.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
I've literally got the notebook in the drawer next to me.
Yeah.
Kept as part of the archive. And I thought if ever I have like, a solo show anywhere or anything like that, I'm gonna, photocopy that page and have it up on the wall. Big.
Yeah.
Well, we did the show. Sorry.
God.
Yeah, it just goes to show that that's exactly the sort of attitudes that the government had towards that. Anything new, anything different from what we're trying to tell people, that's not allowed. It's really interesting that you'd say stuff about manufactured culture, because we don't really think about culture as being manufactured. We think of it as something that happens organically, but in that respect, the Polygon, music company and all these sorts of things, all these people were there, to some degree that is being manufactured. They are telling the people, this is the music that you need to listen to. This is the culture that you should subscribe to.
Well, exactly. There are networks set up for that to happen, and that's that's how it works. That's why you have PR companies. That's why you have people like Radio 1 and Radio 1 playlists. It's like, all the record labels back then were obviously really up for getting their dance music records played on Pete Tong's show. He was actually a huge audience. Actually, one of the great things about Radio 1 was that Annie Nightingale, who is a complete love, we met her a while back, and I managed to get her to actually announce one of our parties and give directions to it on her Radio 1 show.
Ah, nice.
Legendary.
I mean, how much more legitimate do you need to get than having Annie Nightingale?
Well, that little soundbite that Pete Tong used to play, like celebrate and dance for free. It was just like, I have to go, shut up, listen to you.
It is funny. That all these people. The thing is, though, is that Pete Tong, you associate him with like being really like hardcore into the dance scene. I won't call it the rave scene, because Pete Tong and his music was very, very different from the rave scene stuff going on and what was produced out of that rave scene.
Very influenced, though.
Pete Tong went so.
Absolutely, he was head of London Records, wasn't he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But he just went in a completely different direction. He went, Ibiza house in the 90s, and rave, jungle, drum and bass was just sort of hatching in these different areas. So it's funny to think that that person of influence took that direction and might have had a bigger impact had he gone in a different way. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there.
Tell you what, one thing I used to love about the early, about the free party world was you never knew who was playing.
Yeah.
You never knew hardly ever who was playing unless there were, unless you were at a DIY party or a smoke screen party, or maybe where you actually knew who the people were. There were loads of amazing DJs. All the people who used to play for us. None of them had PR companies. None of them had a manager. They come to do it because they loved it, and they were all brilliant. In particular, one of them who went on to make a name as an internationally famous like DJ, techno DJ, was Roland the Bastard.
Yeah.
I remember driving him to his first ever warehouse party in London with the Liberators, and that's when he hooked up with Chris and Dave Drummer and all of that lot, and that led to his kind of future career.
I mean, it was free raves where I really heard like the sort of industrial sound of techno, like gabba techno, like jungle tech and stuff like that. Like you said, you would go to a free party and you wouldn't know what was going to get played. You wouldn't know who was playing. Do you know what I mean? You were literally just there for the music and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And like,
and the experience.
Yeah, just the music, the experience, the people.
Led by set, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
It was led by the whole kind of package of being there with all these people dancing in a temporary autonomous community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a geezer called Hakim Bey who wrote about kind of this idea of the TAZ, the temporary autonomous zone, and I think, you know, the Free Pies were very much like that. You know, whether it's in a field in the West Country or on the edge of the Pennines, or whether, you know, it's with 30 sound systems in a dirty great building in London for a week, which is, you know, also our experience, because the Criminal Justice Act obviously networked us with a huge amount of people who were based in London, and after that we used to get invited to come to London and do exactly that. You know, come and provide a West Country sound in the big squat parties. And, you know, we did things like, my friend who ran Unsound System, he took the University of North London buildings in Kentish Town, and he had them from just not far from the Forum, but he had them for like 3 months in late '95, I think it was. And we went like, with 5k to begin with, and we went back again a couple of weeks later with like 10k, and it ended up like New Year's Eve '95. We were in there with 70k in the main room for like a week.
Oh my god!
Wow.
With, you know, music, funk, reggae, you know, techno, house, you know, jungle, the whole works.
Crazy.
That is crazy. That's unbelievably crazy. So you're there, right? And it seems to me that you're sort of like skirting between the, you know, the legal world and the illegal world with the underground and stuff like that. And I know, you know, it's not quite as cut and dried as that, but, you know, word must have got about that you're taking these pictures, you are speaking to these people, you do have this network. How did people feel about you, you know, taking all these pictures, being as deeply ingrained into all of this as you were, and, you know, potentially having photographic evidence of people committing crimes? I mean, how did they feel about that?
Nobody ever really raised it as an issue. I mean, to be honest, the first few years of particularly Glastonbury in 1989, it made me really aware of just how conscious people were of cameras. But I wasn't using a big digital SLR. I was using a £70 Nikon manual camera that I'd thrown on the floor like 10 times, you know, with a broken meter. And, you know, it clearly wasn't any kind of paparazzi situation. I've actually still got the camera. Right here.
Wait.
Oh, cool. Here it is.
That's what I made, you know, all those early pictures on. But, you know, Glastonbury 89, you had to ask everybody. And I was also using a Rolleiflex, which is a twin lens reflex camera, to make square pictures. And you look down through that, so you're not kind of got something big and aggressive in your face. But that, you know, Glastonbury that year did teach me the etiquette, and people were suspicious of people with cameras for good reason, because of the undercover presence. It was well known, you know. And you know, criminality, I don't buy into the idea that culture was ever really criminal. What it was doing was making money that was escaping the revenue and going into the pockets of ordinary people who helped create the culture. And government just did not like that in the slightest. So, you know, now if you look at kind of like how it's gone, you know, everything's card transactions, cashless festivals are a phenomena, you know.
Yeah.
There came a point when HMRC turned up and had an office at Glastonbury. You know, it's all about the money. And, you know, the money involved in the festival industry these days is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, these little individual economies, you know, and they're working in favour of the people who were there. And you know, obviously, you know, not traceable. You know, the cash flow that they created, and the cultural cash flow that they created wasn't traceable. You know, because they were an opportunity for like-minded people to get together and cross-fertilise with ideas and to create a unity that became, you know, political in opposition to the legislation that went to criminalise the culture.
I think you're right. Like, thinking back, you know, with that in mind, you know, seeing somebody there who's taking pictures for the general raver, for the general person that's just gone there to have a good time, it's just going to be considered as somebody, you know, capturing memories, capturing Do you know what I mean? The vibe that was there. But obviously, if you're there with an ulterior motive, you're trying to catch somebody out and this, that, and the other. Of course, you got to be conscious of somebody else with a camera there because you got to be scared of being caught out yourself. Do you know what I mean? And there's, like you said, in terms of the governmental side of it, it's something that they cannot control. And if they can't control it, they have to find ways of demonizing it and being able to shut it down. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, like thinking back, yeah, you're right. It wouldn't have been brought up as an issue, depending on what side you come from. You know.
I mean, you know, one or two stories. I mean, there's like the big Exodus festival that happened in 1997 on their farm outside Luton. I got kidnapped by some Rastas. Because literally some dreads picked me up, saw me with the camera, and they're like, right, get back in the car. I was quite up for it. I was like, yeah, sure, no worries, let's go. You know, because obviously if you've got something to hide, you've got something to hide. If you're not, if you're open and transparent, people, you know. And in the end, it was Biggs from Exodus, you know, Dreadlock, who'd been with us on the criminal justice boat once. He was like, they stopped contacting him. And he was like, what are you doing? Him in the back of the car. You know, because I wasn't a local face, I wasn't recognised. But, you know, he was trying to rescue people from that. You know.
So, I mean, you must have been quite a well-known figure eventually throughout, you know, the rave scene, as it were. I mean, especially by the people that are putting on the, you know, putting on the free parties and things like that.
Small community, you know, and you know, I had a truck that was pretty recognisable. A lot of people would, you know, came via the truck to you know, hang out, have fun, you know, kind of thing. And that's how you'd recognise the people a lot of the times. You know, the same vehicles would turn up at the same parties, and obviously, you know, offering hospitality on wheels is quite a good thing. And plus, you know, being there at the beginning and being there at the end, to put the speakers up, take them down, and being part of the infrastructure was, you know, was something also that you know, validated your presence, in a big way, because you were obviously making it happen.
Yeah, that was what I loved about going to the first free parties in like sort of 2000, 2001. Do you know what I mean? Meeting everybody, seeing the wonder. Do you know what I mean? Like after hearing these tape packs from like Dreamscape, Fantasia. Do you know what I mean? And sort of hearing about this vibe and then sort of seeing it in its flesh, all these people sort of coming together and just enjoying it. Of course, I got soaked into like, I met one of the first crews I met was Daylight Robbery in Manchester, and they built their own sound system, you know, really got into the like the electronics, the engineering side of it. I would be there with the van, you know, helping them with the speaker boxes, going around with black bags, like, do you know what I mean, picking up the rubbish, speaking to them, because at the time I'm making tunes, I've just got my first set of turntables, so I want to get involved and, do you know what I mean, get a set myself, do you know what I mean? But just getting into that whole vibe of it, like it definitely was a culture. It felt like a way of life. Do you know what I mean? Being part of the sound system culture and free party.
Yeah, they didn't call it DIY culture for nothing, did they?
Yeah,
because it was. Yeah, we built speakers, you know, big bass scoops, JBL drivers, all of that.
I mean, and then coming from like Jamaican heritage myself, coming from sound systems, do you know what I mean? Sound clashes and stuff like that. To see that transferred, do you know what I mean, into another space, do you know what I mean, and taken on by people with a different, do you know what I mean, take to it. It was amazing to me. It seemed like homage.
I think that's an incredibly valid thing to say because, you know, really, actually, for us, reggae and carnival in particular they were very much the music and that carnival phenomenon were very much the gateway for us into raving. Yeah. Absolutely, you know, we were Rastas before the dance you know, before the dance music came around, everything was Irie, and you know, we were listening to all the reggae we possibly could.
And obviously Bristol
Carnival, you know, Moss Side, Notting Hill. I went to Moss Side Carnival in 1989 and Notting Hill the same year as part of my degree show. You know, to do a comparison, that's why I kind of included that culture in the book.
Yeah,
because you know, that was another form of the same kind of thing. That massive communal identity forming, community orientated celebration, you know, also had an awful difficulty in surviving to begin with, before becoming a massively, you know, profitable commercial enterprise in, you know, in the form of Nottingham Carnival as we see it today.
Yeah. But I suppose you remember back then, like walking through like Moss Side in the summer, Do you know what I mean? You just hear so many houses with their windows open, speakers at the windows, just blasting
Yeah,
reggae music.
exactly.
So it was almost like it was a free party in the city. Do you know what I mean? It was almost
Yeah,
like a free
absolutely.
party. Do you know what I mean? There, man. Like, oh,
Absolutely.
that's mint. I can't wait to read this book. Do you know what I mean? And just see traces of my hometown included in there as well, man. That's like, I can't wait to get it. It exists. To resist. Make sure you get your hands
Well, I'll
on
tell
that
you
book.
what, you'll have quite a lot of difficulty because there are literally maybe 2 or 3 copies left.
Well, I'm hunting for it.
The first edition, of those 1,100, the last 2 copies have gone for £200 and £300 each.
Wow.
My pa, who was president of Magnum, the world's most important photojournalism agency, he bought one for Christmas and paid me £200 for it, for his foundation in Bristol, and a private collector paid £300 for the copy for that.
So how does it feel for your work to become a collector's item? Because that's basically what it's done.
Responsibility that I owe the people in the Kickstarter who helped me make it.
Yep.
The 300 early bird copies of the Kickstarter were £25 each. So I'm really grateful to all those people who supported me. And I think, making something that is an investment for them, they paid £25 for their copy. Copies are now changing at £200-300 each.
Yeah.
That's a big thank you to all those people who helped me make what I wanted to make and supported me in that process.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of your duty as an artist is to keep making that happen, so that the people who do support you, who buy your work independently because they want to and recognise its worth and its value, get something back for that help and that that respect that they've paid. I think that's really.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful perspective. That's a beautiful look on it, really. Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So, what about all of the the negatives that you have? I mean, obviously those are, I would hope, safely stored away somewhere as well as digitized. I mean, what's going to become of those?
Well, they're actually. I'm sat in my bed, which is where my office is right now, but they're lining the shelves of the little place I live in. But half half of my life is in a barn about 3 miles away.
Yeah.
All the filing cabinets full of slides, and half my life literally are in a barn, sat there, kind of thing, in a field, because I haven't got anywhere else for them to go.
Is there a plan to ever sort of digitize your work in any way?
That's what took 4 years at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I sat over the scanner and I digitized everything, because I knew that making it visible and making it seeable via the internet was going to give it power. Was going to help me find an audience.
Yeah.
And it was my Facebook that made the Kickstarter. Every time I scanned like an event, I would publish the pictures on my Facebook profile. That rapidly built up to like 5,000 friends.
Right.
I've been like that way for a very long time now. I now have another private profile, which has like 3,500, and a Facebook page with another 3,000 on top of it. But again, going back to being an artist, I think it's important that you need to create an engaged audience who are interested in your work, and that's what social media did for me.
Yeah.
And provided me with a massive motivation, because people were so interested, gallery by gallery, as I was posting these pictures that went on to make Exist to Resist. The biggest feedback I got from people was that, look how much freedom we have lost in the space of a generation.
Yes. Yes.
And there is no more, greater motivation for me to carry on and keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, I'm, without a shadow of a doubt, need a publisher on board to create a second edition of Exist to Resist.
Yeah.
I need more numbers. It needs to be seen by a lot more people. I've taken it to various universities, to do lectures and stuff like that, and the people I've spoken to have loved what they've read and what they've seen. And I think for the generation that's coming, it's incredibly important that they realise just what kind of a transformation we've gone through culturally in just like 20 odd years.
I suppose that brings it like full circle, because I was going to kind of ask you, as as things started to, as the free party sort of movement and culture started to get bigger and bigger, like when I first got into it, that was the first time I would start to see actual names on flyers for some of these free parties. At first, it was just this location, loads of like really good, like cool artwork, do you know what I mean, of mushrooms, pills, and stuff like that, do you know what I mean, just everything about the rave scene. And then eventually, you know, you started to see names actually starting to dictate sort of the vibe of what the party was gonna be about, what the party vibe was gonna be like. You know, how was that change from your perspective? How did you feel about that sort of starting to come in? Because at first it was all about the community, but now stars were beginning to be born, so to speak, within the free party culture.
There are second generation sound systems out there now.
Mm-hmm.
Kids who used to come to parties in the 90s have started off in their own rigs, and particularly in the West Country. I don't really go to free parties any longer.
Yeah.
Because I just work all the time, but I do keep an eye on all the things that are happening out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't ever really gone away.
Yeah.
There's so many Southwest sound systems. It's quite ludicrous, particularly Bristol. On occasion, they've hosted like loads of massive affairs. But they're never publicised, or the only reporting you get is via local media. Raves happening here, police control numbers, etc.
Yeah.
And frankly, it kind of almost seems to me like our local press are actually probably maybe invested in via the police, because the language is always the same. It's like illegal rave, mess, ravers, drugs, officers got hurt, maybe or maybe not. The formula of reportage is incredibly predictable. And the language is, there was a time when raves were raves. They weren't illegal raves.
Yeah.
Now you never hear one word mentioned without the other.
Yeah. Like I would never call them like raves or illegal raves, or they were always free parties. There were always free parties. I love, because for me, I love that inclusion of free. Do you know what I mean? That freedom, do you know what I mean, element to it. To call it a rave or an illegal rave gave it a different connotation, a different kind of like flavor in my eyes. Do you know what I mean? Because a rave is in a club, but a free party, do you know what I mean, is a gathering of people. Do you know what I mean, and stuff. So yeah, man.
The whole idea of the donation culture that went with it, that reversed a model that dominates everybody's life, i.e. prices are fixed by the people that are selling you something. Free parties reverse that. You provide a service for people, and then you ask them to give some money to cover the cost of it via donation. And that price isn't fixed. Some people will give you a lot of money. Some people will try and get out of it. Simple as that. But reversing that pricing structure is one of the things that made free parties, for me, really revolutionary.
I gave out a lot of ganja. Yeah, have a spliff, mate. That set was sick, mate. That was amazing. Have a spliff, mate. Yeah, do you know what I
mean? But I think that's the important thing about it, though, is just the culture was so very different from what we'd all been told that it should be. All of a sudden, people collectively got together and went, hang on a second, we don't actually need to live the way that you're telling us that we need to live. We can create a system that isn't fixed, where people of all types can come together and enjoy a short period of time together, go for a rave, do what you want. There's no judgment. No one's doing anything that other people disapprove of. No one's getting in trouble for it, and I think that was such a jarring contrast to the way that the generation before that had been brought up. It was you've got to work hard and you've got to do something to earn your money, and this was a system where it was like, well, actually, no, you don't. You just have to be nice and have a good time, and people will hopefully give you some cash.
Manners and respect. As my uncle used to say, manners and respect. You see?
Exactly, 100%. And I think it's something that we lost sight of along the way. And talking about the commercialization of something, I read an article a little while ago about the guy who set up the Fantasia raves, and there's that really famous 1994, 93 Fantasia rave on YouTube. It's only about 20 minutes of it, I think. They've got the big, dragon castle thing. They've got the big castle main stage set that looks like it's made out of plywood and stuff like that. I can tell you the festival sets have come a long way since then, that's for sure.
But yeah, I mean, one of the things I've done is I've watched Boomtown begin in a restaurant up in Bristol with a speaker is above it, and turn over, just over a 10-year period into 80,000 person set built in the extreme, environment that's absolutely incredible.
I need to go to Boomtown.
Those guys, because they literally, they the first thing they did was meant to be a cider festival. They were doing free parties. Police got to hear about the fact they applied for a license for this. The police absolutely priced them out of a license. They had to move the party, took it somewhere else. Had the Wurzels headlining, and then 12 years later, now they're pretty much the foremost leaders of the independent festival market, and they've done something incredible in that time period. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Boomtown is. It's outside of the really big festivals like Glastonbury and Festival and Isle of Wight and things like that. I mean, Boomtown really does seem to be the one that that people are talking about a lot. Because I think it offers somewhat of a throwback to that original free party vibe. I think the guys that set it up, and like I say, with the Fantasia stuff, it suddenly went from all of these free parties that weren't particularly well organized in their infrastructure, to having stuff like Fantasia where you could turn up, everybody knew where it was, you didn't have to pay that much to get in, you're guaranteed to see DJs playing for X amount of time, you're going to have a decent sound system, there's probably going to be a few lasers going there as well, and it was completely legit. And then people sort of went from this position of, oh, hang on a sec, this is hard work, having to try and fight the police all the time for all these sorts of things, when we can just sort of legitimize ourselves a little bit and move to this new festival style model. And that's exactly what you're talking about, where it becomes a taxable thing. You can tax people on their entry, you can you've got to hire security, you've got to hire the sound systems, exactly where it's going to be, and you've got to make people pay for licenses and stuff like that. So it was kind of a trick to move people into that system.
It is an extortion racket. Simple as that. Licensing these.
Yeah.
It's an enormously complex, expensive process that that's really inhibiting to the culture. I've been part of the infrastructure in Glastonbury for nearly 30 years. Watched Boomtown, develop as an environment. Worked for Stephen Garden. Been part of the festival world, as it's grown into the industry it is today, and the hoops that they have to jump through, the lawyers they have to employ, the insurance they have to pay, it's vast. Boomtown, I was zone managed one of the areas one year, and literally, you have to go around and minute by minute by minute shut down different venues. If those venues exceed their closing times by minutes, there are people out there with noise meters listening, and they will fine the festival organisers for those breaches of the license. And it's every opportunity to rack up the costs, for the external authorities to approve the license and to enable their, compliance with the terms of that license. It's something that I think makes free parties in the free party world and culture
Do you
ever
think
more valid.
So did kind of like what Aaron was saying before, do you think it was something that eventually that even the sort of free party organisers started to realise that, okay, to make things easier, we're going to have to start sort of applying to some of their rules, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Simulation. The Romans invented it. You know, when the Roman Empire became successful, it became successful because of assimilation. I.e., what they would do was they would enforce their own gods with the proviso that the people could worship, the conquered people could worship their own gods at the same time as well as the Roman gods. But the Roman gods had to be first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I've come up with this kind of like, I'm actually applying for a PhD at the moment on the idea, to research the idea of cultural enclosure. You know, what I was talking about with land, beforehand. It was about the enclosure of culture and the dependency that brings, because culture is more powerful than politics. And by controlling culture, by saying, what is allowed and what is not allowed, you're taking social control to a level that really hasn't been seen before.
Yeah, that'd be a super duper interesting thing to read, and I can completely see how that's a legitimate idea. Just because culture is technically something that cannot be touched or traded with doesn't mean that it isn't a real thing that can be manipulated and
molded,
controlled.
Yeah, absolutely.
All these sorts
You'll try applying for an Arts Council grant. You know what I mean? It's point of fact.
Yeah.
The hoops, it's got to be engaging with. It's just not ongoing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your art is your art, but our rules are still our rules. Do you know what I mean?
Well, exactly. I think it's much more to do these days with facilitating, cultural production rather than art. Art and culture itself that's exists in its own right.
I see that. And we did, especially in regards to how the sort of free party culture has turned into like with Glastonbury, do you know what I mean, and things like that. That is such a regulated, do you know what I mean, completely manufactured thing now compared to what it was, its true roots and intentions of from where it started. So yeah, I completely agree with you there.
Absolutely. The most fun thing about Glastonbury years ago was all the free parties that used to happen. Now there's just none of that. Absolutely none of it. Nothing that's not programmed happens.
Yeah. And again, it's something like 200 quid a ticket. And look, I am not knocking Glastonbury. I love Glasgow. I've been many times.
Wrote me a passage for the back of my book and opened my first exhibition in 1997. And he is a massive dog. I mean, it's down to him that I began this journey. He gave me access to that culture. But he's a brilliant point of fact. To keep that festival running has been an incredible achievement over the years. The amount of relationships he's had to maintain, the way he's had to bend with the wind and take on board, the much more restrictive licensing practices and the cost of that, is an incredible thing. And if anybody's responsible for really popularising our culture, Michael's played an incredible role in that. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's been going 50 years now, I think.
Entirely acceptable to a massive swathe of the British public. He told me when he went to see him about writing something from the back of the book, he was like, "Matt, you do know that 5 or 6% of the British public registered for a Glastonbury ticket last year. That's a huge number of people."
Yeah. Getting a ticket is tricky, and again, at 200 quid a ticket, I'm not knocking the fact that that's the price. I mean, I remember going when the prices were £110 a ticket, and then it's like £200 now. It's probably closer to 250 quid for a ticket now, and
I've never paid a ticket ever.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to buy a ticket. I know enough people to be able to. Either work there. In fact, my mum lives in a catchment area, so I can get.
Oh, cool! So you get friends and family.
Yeah. So I can get one of those, but £250 for a ticket for your average punter is a lot of money. People who go to Glastonbury as punters, I have an awful lot of respect for them too, because what they have to go through to get in and be there is just massive. They have no protection, tents, whatever happens weather-wise, they've just got to deal with it. Have all the stuff taken off them by random security. I think it's an incredible testament to
how much people love community celebration.
Yeah.
That they will put themselves through all of that stuff to religiously go, and it will be the highlight of their years, even though the actual process of getting in and getting out is a complete flipping nightmare.
Yeah, I know friends who used to like to, go in and then go out and go to the shower and stuff, and I was it takes you half an hour, like literally half an hour to get out if you're close to one of the exits, right? If you're not, and you're on the other side of a festival, you've got to walk. It's going to take you 2 hours to walk across from one side to the other, and then it's going to take you God knows how long to go out because there's traffic everywhere. I don't know if the traffic around Glastonbury at that time is
once
just
you're in, you're in.
ridiculous.
As far as I'm concerned, the
that's
best time to leave is like a week after the festival's finished.
Yeah, yeah.
I've frequently been there for 3 months at a time because working as part of infrastructure. For many years I've been involved with the painting of the rubbish bins. And that is a 3 month kind of like a 3 month escapade, or 2.5 months. That begins at the beginning of May and ends like midway through July. And that's given me a unique insight into the workings of Glastonbury and the community of people who produce it, and the little people, if you like. And one of the things I really would love to do actually is make a book just about Glastonbury. I had more Glastonbury 50th anniversary book than any other individual photographer, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, Glastonbury's an amazing festival.
Well, I've been sort of sat here silently, sort of thinking about the photography side of things. Like being a DJ, a performer within the drum and bass scene, the club scene as well. You know what I mean? I'm thinking back to like when I went to free parties and the pictures that I had from there, or the videos that I had from there of me like climbing up on a really tall wall and just looking down at all these people dancing in front of a sound system and stuff like that. And I'm kind of interested to hear your sort of views on, do you feel like photography, when it comes to those kind of events, or it comes to this kind of culture, do you feel like the community side of photography is sort of lost its edge? Because I'm thinking back to like when I go to a rave or when I go to an event, do you know what I mean? When I'm looking at the pictures, is it more about the actual event itself, or is it more about like, do you know what I mean, like how I look and how I can use this to promote myself?
A very significant factor, I think, in raving as a whole.
Yeah.
Is that there were no cameras.
Yeah.
In my lifetime as a photographer, it's become incredibly hard to be a commercial photographer, earn a living from it.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of cameras that are out there now. There were no mobile phones. There was no digital photography when I began. It was all film. Now everybody has a mobile phone. So the amount of cameras per capita per person is vast.
Yeah.
And everything's documented. And one of the challenges for being it's one of the reasons I focused on my archive work was because the people in that were existing without having to document anything. They were there for the moment, for the time. And I think that's one of the things that changed raving massively. Is that originally you could only access the culture by going to the events.
Yeah.
Now you can get the music on your phone. You can get the pictures on your phone. You can watch films on your phone. You don't have to go physically and be present in those moments to hear that music played by those people. You can have it 24 hours a day in the privacy of your own bedroom.
You could be playing Fortnite and all of a sudden a live show will appear in your game. In that, like, apparently,
lockdown is a perfect example.
Yeah.
You've got more people live streams, to an audience that's housebound than you'd ever have dreamed. And and again, what a testament to the power of the culture that people love that so much that that's what they want to do.
Yeah. But I suppose for people like you who were taking pictures for a different purpose, do you know what I mean? For a different reason, do you know what I mean? As opposed to how it is now. And that, like you said, it's incredibly difficult now for a photographer.
I wanted to be a witness to what was going on and to show what we were doing to people who weren't there. And actually, outside of taking the sound system places, years ago, I used to get paid by people to take the work to squat parties on slide. and then use Kodak carousel projectors to project the images of what was going on from our adventures around the country, at squat parties. Like, one of the things that came out of the early 90s was the alternative news media that has obviously grown, exponentially with the growth of digital culture.
Yeah.
There were organisations like the Sleeves in Brighton, like Undercurrents, Squall magazine, who were like a broadsheet newspaper who dealt with all that non-news news that was related to the culture being criminalised by the Criminal Justice Act.
Yeah.
And they were incredible. It was all about showing people that the stereotypes were incorrect.
That's amazing, because I remember going to like a party, like a free party, but it was in like the basement of a pub. And what they'd done is they'd set up a projector in one room. They had some people doing art, like UV art, do you know what I mean, on the walls and stuff. But they'd set up a projector, and on one of the walls, it was pictures of different squat waves and like free parties from and I'm like, that's mad. So it's like that has probably skipped generations as another way of like sort of highlighting the stereotype is incorrect. Do you know what I mean? Everybody from all different backgrounds, cultures, everywhere is engaging in this like free party culture. It's not what the media presents to you. But to know that was something that was happening, 10, 15, 20 years ago? Do you know what I mean? Before now, that's amazing. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Well,
here's a little story that'll make you laugh. Just before Christmas, I sold one of the prints from the Saatchi Gallery from the Criminal Justice Act to a chap who was in one of them. He was holding a banner that said, "Stop trying to kill our culture." You got smoke screen from Sheffield, their rig in the centre of the picture, with my mate Martin driving the truck, everybody on the roof, a couple of coppers like in the foreground. Left-hand side, there's a banner which says "Stop trying to kill our culture" with a love cabbage, which is a sort of free party symbol, that came from the Nottingham Sheffield kind of like deep house crew. And the guy holding it, was a friend of a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And this chap recognised the bloke holding the banner. And I'd heard a story that the banner there were two banners painted. One said "Free speech, free beer, free parties," and the other one, "Stop trying to kill our culture." And have a guess at who painted the "Stop trying to kill our culture" sign. The "Free speech, free beer, free parties" one was painted by a lady called Emma from a sound system called Babel in and around Leicester.
Yeah.
Have a guess at who painted the other one. It was a young man called Robin, otherwise known today as Banksy.
Oh, I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say Banksy, but I knew.
So you've actually unwittingly revealed Banksy's physical identity.
Anyway, nobody knows what he looks like.
There you go. Let's hope so that he remains as anonymous as ever.
Well, exactly.
But no, that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Look, we've run out of time for our podcast now, but I want to say a massive thank you for you joining us today. I really appreciate it. I've been saying to Dilly all week that this is, one of the most important people that we'll speak to probably this year in regards to what we're trying to do. So, guys, for everyone listening out there, please, if you can, try and find a copy of Matt's book, Exist to Resist.
It's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive.
The best way to do that is to keep in touch with me on Facebook. There's a Facebook page named after the book, Exist to Resist. Look for that. Like the page. Stay in touch, and hopefully soon I will find a publisher to reproduce Exist to Resist in the second edition, in a much more massive way. And the other thing I thought I'd do for you is I'll we-transfer you that Breaks tape that I made in a field in 1995 called Break It. A lady DJ.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Jan. And maybe you want to make that available on your site for free download.
Certainly will.
Breaks music that was
certainly will
on our rig. That was made for a wedding somebody's wedding, and she was on the decks. There was a massive dog fight in the middle where a staffy got savaged by somebody else's dog underneath and put them apart. I had that recorded then, and I was taping. I'd plug it into the mixer and tape some of the sounds that were coming out of our rig. And she's a legend, Jen, and her daughter as well. She now is out there playing tunes still, second generation. Lucy Lee Shaded, between the two, they're an incredible. And it's a great bit of music. More to the point.
Oh, that's a mix. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, man. I've learned so much, and like I said, like I was saying before, like you actually got on, it'd be amazing just to hear your perspective from someone that was like that saw so many sides. Do you know what I mean? I didn't realize that you touch base in like Manchester and close to Manchester. Experience things up here. So to be able to hear your perspective from other sides of the UK of what was going on back then. Yeah, I think there's going to be so many gems in this podcast for people to be able to take away for themselves. Do you know what I mean? As a part of like culture.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for this, Matt, man.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great to chat to you both. Absolutely
no
brilliant.
problem at all. And we will definitely keep in touch as well. Obviously, we're on Instagram as well, so we can keep in touch. And let's hope that you can find a publisher to get that book started out again. I know I'll certainly be advertising that on the amenbreaks.co.uk channel.
Most definitely.
And we'll be working hard to make sure that we we can support that as best we can. We really hope you enjoyed this show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Amen Breaks UK. And don't forget to follow Diligent Fingers on Instagram at Diligent Fingers. Please, guys, if you've got anything you want to share with us, anything that you'd like us to cover, send it in to contact@amenbreaks.co.uk.
Absolutely brilliant. Nice to meet you, lads. Together in real life at some point in the future. Take it easy. Carry on with the good work. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Guys,